I'm not talking about special needs trust or guardianship. So if you're interested in that, I believe there's 3 sessions in a row today that are talking about that specific topic. So if you missed this one, just stay around for another hour. There's another one. And then if you missed that one, there's another one after that one. My name is John Finch. I am the director of Florida's ABLE program, ABLE United. And so I'm waiting for my friends and coworkers to hopefully bring over their laptop. And since I'm speaking, I think I take my mask off, right? Is that how it works? And so if you're, why I'm talking about ABLE accounts and why I kind of like just wanted to learn a little bit more about special needs trust, even though I know quite a bit enough to be dangerous, but I'm not an attorney. And so ABLE accounts often work with special needs trust. So there's going to be some information as it relates to that. If it's on guardianship, not so much. I don't have a lot of information I can give you on guardianship, so I would encourage you to check out one of those other programs. And so as we wait for my presentation to arrive, I'll talk a little bit about, they're texting me saying they're coming with my laptop. And so we'll start. Yes, sir. Okay. Yep. That is a good question. So I'll give you my elevator pitch of 30 seconds to talk about what ABLE accounts are, so we're all on the same page. So basically, back in 2014, federal legislation, the Achieving a Better Life Experience Act, passed that allowed states to set up tax-advantaged savings and investment accounts specifically for the disability community. Each state was required to set up their own program on how it was going to be run. The state of Florida chose to run this through the Florida Prepaid College Board. So the same entity that's helped over 1 million families for the last 30 years save for higher education expenses is now helping individuals with disabilities and their families save for disability-related expenses. So this goes to your question. And so what's unique is that the funds in the account do not count as a resource for Medicaid or SSI or any other federally means-tested programs. There are some very broad rules on how you can use the funds that you save in an ABLE account, to go to this gentleman's question. It's called a qualified disability expense. And so the Treasury says, well, how do we come up with qualified disability expense? What can we do? So they kind of gave 13 broad categories on what you can use the funds in an ABLE account for. And it ranges from housing, health, medical, transportation, oversight and monitoring, legal fees, financial fees, even funeral and burial. So even if the individual passes away, funds in that account could still be used to assist them. So the question we often get is like, okay, this is very broad. Can you give us some examples, right? And we have asked Treasury, we've asked Social Security, give us concrete examples of what you can use it for. And their response has been, ultimately, if it relates to that individual and helps improve or maintain their health, independence, or quality of life, then it's a qualified disability expense. And so the Treasury only gave us one example in their final regulations. They said, what if you had an individual, maybe autistic or some kind of disability that they needed some device to help them communicate and navigate their community? Then a cell phone and a cell phone plan would be a qualified disability expense. So then I went to Social Security and say, okay, let's just spitball. All right, let's just talk about vacation, right? We hear that. We're in Orlando. Half of you going to Disney after this. I know. I'm sorry I can't join you, but thanks for inviting me. I appreciate it. But yeah, is that going to help improve or maintain their health and independence of life, right? The quality of life you get from a vacation, I don't know, as a parent, I have 3 children. Disney's not my idea of quality of life, but it may be for them. And so vacations would be a count. We got some pushback, okay, what things are not qualified? But most likely if you're using the money to gamble, tobacco, buying me a Disney ticket, that's probably not a qualified expense. I mean, it benefits my life, but not yours. Alcohol is probably not going to be a qualified. Alcohol for your caregiver, probably not going to be qualified. I asked about medical marijuana, right? What about medical marijuana? And Social Security said, most likely purchasing of the medical marijuana, no. But the doctor appointments to go, okay, because it's not federally approved, so not buying the substance itself, but getting the appointments necessary to be to a point where you could be qualified for that, that would be an okay expense. So very broad. Social Security really, if you're on supplemental security income, because that's one of the about 40% of the people we serve in the program fall under that. And so those individuals, there are some additional rules that Social Security has put down. The biggest one being housing. All right, and housing is very broadly defined inside of Social Security Administration. Thank you, Steph. Steph here just got a text message saying, hey, can you give it up for Steph? Go here, Steph. It's impromptu speaking on ABLE accounts here. I just, probably it's somewhere in there. So housing, right? Because what is supplemental security income for, right? What is the purpose of Social Security checks? To pay for basic living expenses. Housing, which for $790, I don't know where you're living for that, but housing, food, clothes, and that's probably about it. So Social Security says, well, if people are going to put money in an ABLE account and then use that to pay their housing, well, that's bright. Then why should we got to put some kind of rules in place. So Social Security said, okay, if you're on SSI and you're using an ABLE account, you could go ahead and pay housing expenses, but it has to be paid in the same month or have the ABLE account pay it directly. So that is the biggest caveat, because it could count as a resource at the beginning of the next month if you kept it in your checking account, for example, and that could cause somebody to suspend or even lose their SSI benefits. Yes? SSDI. So that's good. The great thing about SSDI is a earned benefit, right? You've worked, you have some kind of work history. Either the family has a work history, they've earned the necessary credits to qualify for SSDI, then themselves have worked. So that is a earned benefit and is not impacted by ABLE at all. So you can take money out, use it for housing in an ABLE account, or just keep it in for SSDI, it's not going to impact it at all. Now, if I could just get my password. Why is it when someone's watching you type a password, you can't do it? It's the nerves. Anybody else do that? Is it just me? Okay, I see at least two people. Okay. Oh, no, she's like, no, that's just you. I have a question. That's just you. Okay. Yeah, go ahead. What's your question? What happens on death? Ooh, good question. Man, we could retitle this Hard Questions with John. Let's see if I can get this presentation to work. Give me 1 second. I just want to make sure. Oh, look at that. Oh, this is the old presentation. Sorry, Steph. I'm using the old. This is what's on my laptop. This is what's going to happen. Okay. So good question. So what happens if a beneficiary passes away? Do we have that slide in here? No. We took it out because, honestly, I don't like talking about what happens when someone dies. That's just not my forte. But that's a good question we receive quite often. That's probably the number one question we receive. I'm putting money aside in an ABLE account for a beneficiary. What happens, God forbid, they pass away? And eventually, hopefully, you get to the point where it's like, okay, what happens when I pass away? Now who's going to help them manage that account? That's another conversation. But ultimately, the funds, if we're notified that a beneficiary has passed away, we usually put a hold on the account until we get some kind of documentation on who's authorized to now administer that account on behalf of the beneficiary. So whether that be a personal representative of their estate, whether it be a family member that can provide a death certificate and saying, hey, I'm the only one. We had a child that passed away, and we worked with that family because we know that was a sensitive thing. We wanted to make sure that their funeral and burial expenses were paid. But you could still pay outstanding qualified disability expenses. That's the first thing I need you to know, is that beneficiary passes away, if there's funeral and burial costs, if they had outstanding bills that needed to be paid, those kind of things are qualified. Then any leftover funds would go to the estate of the beneficiary. And so since I'm not an attorney, I can't tell you what happens from there on, but it could go to probate. There might be a will involved. Really, the only time Medicaid recovery might become an issue is if the beneficiary is 55 or older, does not have a surviving spouse or any children with disabilities that they are in care of. Then there's something called Medicaid estate recovery. That's always existed, well, since '93 when they passed that law. But able accounts, you know, for the most part, aren't subject to any kind of estate recovery or recovery from Medicaid. But there could be Medicaid estate recovery if the able account balance goes to the estate, and then there's, you know, they're 55 and older, right? But if they're, so that's a good question. Can the able account be set up to have a beneficiary payable upon death? So the final regulations state that the only beneficiary of an able account could be a surviving sibling that also is qualified to have an able account. It's very, very unique on how they word it. And so in those situations, most likely we would do what we call a rollover to that able account. But that is a situation we'd have to work through. But unfortunately, no, there's not a way to designate a beneficiary directly on an able account if the beneficiary of the able account passes. We'll go with her, and then I'll come to you. And her. The final regs say it has to be a sibling who is qualified for an able account. Now, they put a caveat is, what if it's a sibling that's not qualified to able account? I think there's a way to do it, but there's significant taxes, and there's some legal language that I personally cannot answer, and they would definitely have to get attorneys and legal people that are a lot smarter than me involved. Sir.
Yes. We're talking about Able United, which is a Florida-based able account. For example, our daughter has hers through Fidelity.
Okay. That is correct. So his question was, you're Able United, you're the state of Florida's program, they have an Able account through Fidelity. How does that work? So what's interesting is, like I said, when the federal legislation passed, each state had to set up their own Able program. And so some states, depending on how their 529s were set up or whatever, for example, I think Fidelity, if I'm not mistaken, is through Massachusetts Education something Trust. Mayor Rubini is their director, I think. I had a few conversations with him. But Massachusetts, when they decided, okay, we're going to roll our ABLE program, Fidelity manages their 529 plan. So they were now to say, okay, we'll add ABLE to this robust product. And so Fidelity, for example, provides ABLE accounts. Some states are unique in that they're run independently, and they do kind of like we're in-house running it from the state. Other states partner with other types of banks. For example, Able Now, which is Virginia's program, is through PNC Bank. So it just depends. But yes, different states partner with either financial institutions or other kind of banks to offer Able accounts.
There's no limitation for Floridian to go into any Able account anywhere in the country because it is a federal.
Yes. Yeah, the main difference you're going to see, so this question is like, so the great thing about being the benefit of Floridian is we are limited to state of Florida residents only, while other ABLE programs might have national enrollment. And part of that deals to our funding, because we are a state-funded program to administer this program, so we're limited to state taxpayers, which makes sense. And so the main differences you're going to see across other different types of ABLE programs is their investment lineup. We have, oh, look at that. Look at it. It just ties right in perfectly. We have pre-designed portfolio mix. We have individual fund options. We have savings options. These are unique to the Florida program. But some states, for example, I believe, it's not Ohio, Tennessee's program, I think they have like 40 different investment options. So very, very large set of investment options. So people who are more heavily invested might look at their program. So the investment lineup's one. Also fees, which, do I have a slide on fees? Maybe. There you go. Cost. We don't have a monthly maintenance fee or annual fee. There's no setup fee. If you want paper statements, it's an annual fee of $10, which currently is being waived. We do have an optional ABLE Visa prepaid, but other states most likely will have a monthly, quarterly, or annual fee, and those usually range between $30 and $60. But those are the main differences you're going to see between programs: is investment lineup, fees to get set up, and some of these peripheral types of additional features. For example, we have an optional prepaid card. Some states are like, we're going to give you a debit card whether you like it or not. You're just going to get one. And then some states might have income state reductions if you give money to an ABLE account. We don't have state tax here in Florida, but for example, Michigan, if you're in Michigan and contribute to a Michigan ABLE account, you can deduct up to $2,000 off your state income tax, which is, a pretty decent amount. Yes, ma'am. And I'll go to you next.
This idea of ABLE account.
Mm-hmm.
Is the basic difference between an ABLE account is that the disability person has access to those funds? Is that correct?
Good
I know they can
question.
have $2,000 in it. I understand that, to keep all their federal benefits.
Would-
The difference between an ABLE account, what is the difference?
Okay.
Between an ABLE account and an account for a special needs trust?
Okay. So an ABLE account can hold up to $15,000 per calendar year, can be contributed to the account. These accounts can grow. If you're on SSI, there's a limit of $100,000 into an ABLE account. Anything above that would count as a resource. If you're not worried about SSI, maybe you're just on Medicaid or maybe you're not on any benefits, these accounts can grow up to $418,000 before you can no longer contribute to them. So do the math, $15,000 a year, 22 years, let's talk, and maybe you want to contribute more than $418,000, we can work it out. So who owns the account? Go to your original question of owner of the account. What's unique about ABLE and the way it was started was it was really giving the empowerment to the individual with the disability. So they are the owner of the ABLE account. Now we know not in all situations somebody can set up and manage their own ABLE account. It is a financial product. There's some legal work you got to work through. And in that situation, a parent, a power of attorney, a guardian could open an account on behalf of the beneficiary and manage it before them. We're actually in the process of expanding this. There was final regulations that dictate how states are to run ABLE programs that expanded this to include siblings and grandparents and even a representative paid through Social Security to establish these accounts. So that's coming. Hopefully Q4 of this year we'll see. And so what prevents an individual with a disability to manage their account? Since they are the owner, unless we're notified of their incompetence, we're going to allow them to access those funds. Of course, they're going to have to call. They're going to need to know their account number or their social, their date of birth, where they want the money to go. I mean, there's some rules and things they have to process. But what happens is when an account is created, you set it up with an email, and that's email is your login. You're going to have an email and a password, and that's primarily how you're going to access the account. So safeguard that to prevent anybody taking it. But those are kind of what we have in place to prevent a beneficiary who might not be competent to access their account. Let me go to her first, and then I'll come to you. Yes? Hi.
The first one, I think I saw it before this. ABLE account is just for individuals receiving Social Security income?
No. So
I have a 5-year-old
yeah.
with autism. Can I open an ABLE account?
Yes, good question. See, we're working slowly through this presentation in all kind of different order here, but we're going to get through it all. All right.
I get confused when it says here BCSSI. I assume it's Social Security.
Yes. Yeah.
5 years old, you don't get any.
Yeah, there's basically there's 3 requirements for an ABLE account. Specifically for an ABLE United account, you have to be a Florida resident at the time you apply. The other 2 are true for all ABLE programs. The individual has to have basically a diagnosis of a disability that occurred prior to age 26, and it has to be severe. And so how they mark severity is 2-pronged, basically saying if you're on SSI or SSDI, you meet that severity requirement. If you're not on SSI or SSDI, the Social Security benefits you're talking about, then you have to go to the second column where you have a diagnosis from a doctor that says it's marked in severe functional limitations, that the disability is expected to last at least 12 months, and they kind of point back to Social Security language without stating that. And so I usually tell people if you're at the Family Cafe, you probably are going to qualify. I mean, the reason why you found out about this program is because you probably meet the qualifications to have an ABLE account.
And the second question is, if I open an account for my son, can I close that account anytime?
Yes. So her question was like, okay, I have the account. My son's 5, I think you said. You're putting money away. You no longer need it or you don't want to use it. What's going to happen? Can I close my account? Yes, you can. But beware that if there's any earnings on the account and you're closing it without a specific purpose of it being a qualified disability expense, which remember is very broad, then there could technically be income tax on the earnings portion, because remember these grow tax-free. These are after-tax dollars going in. If it makes 5-10%, you'd be taxed on the earnings portion plus a 10% penalty. But it's based on you reporting that to the IRS. Good question. Let me go here and then I'll come back there. Yes.
I actually have an email account, and I did it when my son was very young, so I used my email, but he's getting close to where he is older, and I want him to participate. Is he going to continue to have to use that email, or can I call Able and
Yeah, good question. So this is a great example. She said she's had a Able account for a while for her son, and she loves it. It's the best thing ever. Everybody do it. She said that, I promise. You didn't hear her. She said that. Super easy. See all this? All right, I'll pay you after. But so her question was, she originally set up the program, because remember, the great thing about Able accounts is the longevity, right? They can last from, we have people in our program that are newborns. We have like a 2-3 month old, and we have somebody that's in our account that's in their 90s, right? So the whole spectrum of life, someone can have an Able account. So she's like, her son's getting more independent. Right now, the account is tied to her email address. Can we switch it over to his? And yes, so there's what they call a change of ALR form or change of authorized legal representative form. That's on our website, or you can just call customer service and we'll mail you or email you one. But basically, it's going to say, hey, here's the new person, and saying there's basically a new email address we want the account to be set up onto. And then what's going to happen is they'll use the new email address. They don't have to create a new password, and then he'll have access to it.
And you had said earlier about if the person is after 55, there might be some kind of Medicaid impact, but I thought there was a new law in place that basically took that away.
So the law for Able accounts, so she's talking about the Medicaid estate recovery. So the law of Florida basically said that the state of Florida's AHCA, basically Agency for Healthcare Administration here in Florida, cannot file a claim on an Able account. But instead, after all outstanding qualified disability expenses are paid, those leftover funds would go to the estate. Now, what happens when it goes to the estate is no longer, because it's no longer Able money, it's that estate's money. And so there's something called estate Medicaid recovery, which may look at, were they on Medicaid? Are they over the age of 55? And they may be able to recoup some of those funds. But at that point, it's no longer Able funds. They got a question over here, and then I'll the state of Florida. Let me go her, and then I'll come to you, sir. Yes. Oh, good question. What's the difference between an Able account and a pooled trust? Don't fail me, slides. Don't fail me. Let's see. There we go. All right. I know it's somewhere in there. All right, good question, because you all came here to learn about special needs trust, but I'm sorry to disappoint you. So special needs trust, basically very high level. There's 3 different kinds of special needs trust. Depends on, basically it comes down to whose money is it, right? Is it your money or is it their money? If it's the beneficiary's money, maybe they got a settlement from a car wreck, they won the lottery, something like that, but they want to maintain their government benefits. That's when a special needs trust comes in. If it's their money, any leftover money after they pass away automatically goes to the state to repay for Medicaid expenses. If it's third-party money, so mom and dad are like, hey, we have life insurance, homes, accounts. We want those funds and these assets to be used to help that individual for the rest of their lifetime when we're gone. That's what a special needs trust is. Now, a pooled trust can be either one of those two. It could be the beneficiary's money, or it could be a third-party money. And usually it's lower amount. Pooled trust, basically, the idea of pooled, it's other people's money coming together to lower the fees associated with trust administration. because it does cost money and attorneys to set up a trust, to keep it running. There's a trustee involved, and usually a pooled trust pools other people's money together to lower the fees and offer the same type of benefits a trust was. What also is unique, a pooled trust, if there's usually any leftover funds, it would be used to help others in that pool and be used to help administer the pool to those families and individuals who are taking part of that pool. So it's a little bit unique, but there's a rider, and I think there's several different pooled trust companies across the state. Yes, sir, and then I'll come to you.
One, I have elderly relatives out west, and they want to contribute to my daughter's,
Uh-huh.
Can they contribute directly into the ABLE account?
Yes. Yeah.
They can deposit.
Yes. Good question. So see, I'm telling you, we're going to hit all these slides because these questions are good. Good question. So has an ABLE account, families out west, how do they put money into an ABLE account? There's two primary ways. There's the good old-fashioned paper mail a check in way. We have a form on our website called a contribution form. They're going to need that person's ABLE account number, but it's going to tell them you put the ABLE account, how much, and it'll give you an address, and you mail in a check. Alternatively, we also have what we call a gifting page. When someone opens an ABLE United account, there's a way where you can kind of open up an online gifting page where somebody can contribute via ACH or debit card to a person's ABLE account. So we have some people that, hey, birthday's coming up, don't buy me anything, just put some money in my my ABLE account. And so we see people utilize this online, but it's a great way to have family, friends, others contribute to somebody's ABLE account and it not count as income for them or negatively impact their benefits. So good question.
Secondly, I'm my daughter's guardian.
Okay.
When I pass, do you have a specific vehicle to bring my successor up to speed on ABLE?
Yes, it's called the John Finch 101 Crash Course. No, I wish that was the case. So we're getting this question actually more frequently now that we've been around for about 5 years now. And so the first thing we did was we created a successor POA form where it allows somebody that says, hey, if this POA passes away, this other person can step up. There's just a little bit of paperwork instead of a lot of paperwork to get that person involved, get the account administration over to them. What we're working on, hopefully, is expanding authorized signatory to more than just one individual. So it could be you and a spouse or you and a trusted person. So that way, if one of you are incapacitated or pass, that other person could step into the role, still manage the account, and nobody has harm and foul. So, but we're still working on different ways to solve that issue because we're seeing that as more and more issue. As you know, these accounts start to age, so are the people running them. So that's a good question. And we try to be proactive and do webinars quarterly. If you're not a Facebook follower, please do, because right now we're giving away iPads, and we only have like 20 registrants. So check out ABLE United. Go to facebook.com/ABLE United. Hit like, and then you can get an iPad. All right, let me go to this lady, and then I'll come to you, and then to you. Go ahead. So the primary ways to get money out of the account outside of the Visa card, which is on the next slide. Look, see, I'm telling you, you guys are perfect. You can do an electronic transfer back to a connected bank account, whether it be your bank account or her bank account. It's up to you. That's primarily how people get money out of the account, and there's no fees to do that. You can also request a check to be sent to you or a third party. It's up to you. Right now, that is a paper request. We're working to actually, hopefully by the end of next month, that will be online again for the people on the account, and then third party later this year. And so that's another way, a free way to get the money out of the account. So those are two primary ways. And then the Visa prepaid cards is just that optional one, which does cost the state quite a bit of money. So we try to offset some of those costs for $2.50 a month.
Okay, so she couldn't use her own already purchased
unless you like threw it back over to that checking account and then use that checking account to the prepaid card. So
My other question is, so my daughter works at Publix, and she has for a lot of years. And I've been talking to them at the corporate level, and they're saying that they're speaking to you folks at the Able account about working on setting up a way, because at Publix, if you work there, you can actually have matching going into a savings before retirement. Are you?
good question.
Are they? I just we haven't had much contact.
Yeah. So I'm not connected to the internet. Sorry, but I promise I wasn't ignoring your question. So this is good. So there's a little piece of legislation that passed that nobody is talking about, and I don't know if it's just because it was why it passed was some people that were in the political arena and kind of knew about it, but there's this piece of legislation passed that was called Working Persons with Disabilities. So WPWD, Working Persons with Disabilities. Oh, so you know about Patricia. How did you find out about it?
Through a very expensive attorney who didn't tell us.
A very expensive attorney who didn't tell you. Okay, well, I'm giving you free advice. All right. So this piece of legislation, it was supposed to be piloted in 2019, was a huge success. They passed it in 2020. ACA had basically the Agency for Health Care Administration that oversees the federal policies for running our state home and community-based waiver program. So the iBudget waiver through APD. What time am I supposed to be done? I don't even know. Okay, I got plenty of time. And the long-term care, they're in charge of creating that paper trail between us and the feds on, what's the match going to be between federal and state funding, what services you're going to offer, all the things. Well, they put a waiver exception called Working Persons with Disabilities to say, okay, our state wants to allow people to keep their iBudget funds and actually earn money, believe it or not. How mind-blowing is that, right? And so they passed it and said now an individual who's either on iBudget waiver, long-term care, can earn up to 550% of the federal poverty limit for a single household, which right now is about $50,000. So an individual can earn $50,000 a year and not jeopardize their iBudget waiver funding. Now, how it's supposed to work, and this is I hate it when you call and like, well, it's supposed to work this way. I'm like, no, you're supposed to say it works this way, not it's supposed to. But if any of you have ever worked with state or called Social Security, right, it depends on who you call and what time of day you call them because it could change. So how it's supposed to work is that when they do your annual assessments or quarterly assessments to see, okay, how much did you earn? If you earned over the typical threshold, which wasn't much, they would just cancel your benefits. And then you need to be in a back pay situation or some kind of emergency situation. What they're supposed to do is look and say, oh, look, we're going to put you under this Working Persons with Disabilities section, which allows you to earn more, actually save more because it bumps the limit from $2,000 to $13,000, and lets you have a retirement account. So the big Publix issue that we've all heard, where when I first started in the disability field about 15 years ago, that was the first thing I heard was like, well, I've been working for 20-something years at Publix, and if I retire or if I quit Publix, I'm going to lose my benefits. And I was like, how sad is that? So finally, the state caught up, passed this legislation, so that should no longer be an issue. Now, is it going to work? I can't tell you because I don't run that program. That's ACA, and the Department of Children and Families oversees that. But that is what passed in 2020. Yeah. So a long time ago, we did approach Publix and say, hey, here's what we have. We didn't get really far. And the sticking point with them is Publix is more than just Florida. They have Publixes in Georgia, Alabama, North Carolina, South Carolina, and they're expanding. And we're a Florida-only program at the time you apply. So they may be working with one of the states that offer a national enrollment. I don't know. But we're not directly. Florida's ABLE program is not, to my knowledge. Okay, I think you had a question.
Yeah, the $15,000 is the maximum contribution, so you cannot live
Correct. So that's 15. So your question is the $15,000 contribution limit. An ABLE account can receive up to $15,000 in contributions per calendar year from all sources. So mom and dad chip in $10,000, grandparents put in $2,000. The most that can go in that account for the calendar year is additional $3,000 for $15,000 total. And that amount is based on the gifting tax. That goes up every 2 to 3 years. So I expect it to be $16,000 probably at the end of next year. But if you spend down, so let's say you put $15,000 in January, you took all that money out and spend it, that's it. You hit the limit for the year. So it doesn't look at the account balance. It's just the contribution amount for the year. The second one does say if the beneficiary is working and not saving for retirement, they can contribute above that amount. So that's a benefit if you have a self-employed or individual that's working at a company that does not offer a retirement account. They can actually use their ABLE account as a retirement vehicle and save above that $15,000 annual limit, and even take advantage of a saver's credit, which could reduce their tax burden. So, but good question. Yes, sir.
What security measures do you have on the account there when people are doing transactions?
Good question. Good question. So his question was, what kind of security do you have? What kind of security do you have in place to protect the transactions that's running ABLE accounts? So that's great. So our program, the state of Florida, actually has a third-party vendor that does the record-keeping back end of ABLE for Florida, and that's called Bank of New York Mellon. Bank of New York Mellon, I think the first bank in the world, or at least in the U.S., they process a little over $1 trillion in transactions annually. They are our records keeper. They have a subsidiary or a business under them called Someday Administration. So we're able to access one of the world's largest financial institutions is ultimately the ones managing the back end of our program. So transactions, account balances, the moving money to actual Vanguard and BlackRock and selling those products, all that is being managed by BNY Mellon. So all I can say is they're the world's largest, and they have an amazing security team, and it's not just John Finch and Tallahassee doing it. So that's always good. The assets, so our question is like, well, what about the security of the assets? Remember, depending on how you set up the ABLE account, because it can be a savings or an investment tool or both, it's really up to you. We have savings options that are an FDIC product through Bank of New York Mellon. We also have a money market account, which is kind of like the state of Florida's money market account, and it's called Florida Prime. But we also have investment products. Vanguard options are U.S. bond and a U.S. stock. We have an international product through BlackRock, and those are very much invested in the market, right? So, I mean, if you were looking at March, late March of last year, or even into April, it didn't look good, all right? Yeah, so the FDIC product is, yes. If you're in the FDIC, so she's talking about security. So the FDIC product has the FDIC pass-through insurance. So it's protected up to $250,000. Right now, there's a very, very minimal return on it, but you know it's secure if one of the world's largest financial institutions goes down. So, yes.
Hi, I have a quick question. My mother and I are about to open an account as I'm entering my professional career in the future when I'm living on my own with personal care assistance. Are they allowed to speak on my behalf on the phone if I had a question? Or how does that work legally?
Yes, good question. And we actually get this quite frequently. We'll have a beneficiary, for example, that's I'm capable of managing my own account, but I don't have the necessary tools to communicate. We do have a dedicated TTY line for that. We also have a translation service that has 320-something languages that they're able to bring on a translator and communicate that way. But if you're in a situation where the beneficiary says, hey, I need to have my mom, my dad access to the account or whatever, we usually say, okay, can you verify some information for us, then give us permission to speak to that person, and then put that person on the phone. And we've done that. I actually listened to some customer service calls where that went through, and that's usually how it works. They say, well, let's verify you are who you say you are, and get mom on the phone, and then she can transact or act on your behalf. Good question. Yes, sir.
Well, if I were to have an able account, if I were to be in a debt one day, or like if I'm just having trouble with trying to make enough money for my future debt, would my future able account serve as a solution to my financial problems?
It depends how much money you're putting in your able account. So he's like, would the able account solve all my financial problems? But potentially. You know, what's unique is, like I said, this program has been around for 5 years. And I remember the early days when we first started. And and just a little bit of background. Yeah, I got time. So before ABLE passed, I actually worked for a statewide nonprofit called the ARC of Florida. And the ARC has 20-plus, 40-something locations across the state where they actually do direct services. I was the state chapter doing more of the government legislative work and putting out fires. I feel like that's all we did was put out fires. But part of that is we were actually pushing the state legislation to get the ABLE Act passed. And then to come alongside and then switch over and actually run the program was like amazing. So it's just awesome. And we had no idea how this was going to work. We didn't know if we were going to have thousands of accounts with $10 balances, or if we were going to have a couple of accounts that had $15,000 balances. We didn't know. And right now what we're seeing is potentially most people are using this as a savings tool. Most people are just putting money in it. Now, we don't have a lot of accounts. We just surpassed about 6,200 active accounts. But those 6,200 accounts combined have over $45 million saved, which is a lot of money. The average account balance is over $8,000. We have a handful of accounts that have surpassed $100,000 in savings in 5 years. And so I can't say this, but an attorney that will present tomorrow, we had him on speaking about his daughter's ABLE account. He's like, I've earned 60% returns in 5 years. Which is, if you look at the stock market and the S&P 500, that's about right. So I can't guarantee what the future may hold, but you do have the potential to have tax-free earnings. Yes?
My next question, how do they invest your money? Because if you have $45 million sitting in the bank, usually the bank is to make money, right? So do the clients get anything?
That's all the clients' money. That $45 million is all those 6,200 people that have an active account. That is their money.
So it's not used to invest in anything to increase the value of it?
Yeah, they're invested depending on when you get to invest, when you get to choose what's going to happen during the enrollment process, you go to a slide that's saying, okay, you're almost there. You're putting a minimum $25 to get started. Where do you want that $25 to go? Do you want it to be in an FDIC savings account? Do you want to be in the money market account? Or do you want to actually invest it in the market? And we have various options. And the ones that we see most utilized are our pre-designed portfolios, basically saying, okay, we'll take out the guesswork and diversify it for you. There's a conservative, moderate growth that's invested in some U.S. stock, U.S. bond, and some international stock, and some money market, depending on where you're at if you invest in the pre-design, in the conservative option. And then those have the potential of earning just depending on the market. And like was mentioned, this time last year, the market wasn't doing so well. But, the last year or so, markets have been doing great, and people have been, fortunate to have significant amount of earnings on their account. So, but it's up to you. You get to choose how you want to save or invest. No. So the question is taxes. So really, the accounts grow tax-free. Whenever you make a withdrawal from an ABLE account, you're going to issue a 1099 QA. That's a form that, as a state and as an administrator of an ABLE program, we're required to send to the feds, to the IRS, saying, this person had a withdrawal in their account. Of that withdrawal, here how much of it was money they put in, also called basis. How much of that withdrawal was earnings, based on if they earned money or not. And then the total amount they took out. So for example, let's say you took out $500. Of that $500, you earned 10%, so 50. So 450 would be basis, 50 would be earnings for a total of $500. That $50 of earnings is tax-free as long as you used it for qualified disability expenses that year. So as long as you had $500 in qualified disability expenses for the year, then there's no taxes. And remember, that's very broad. So housing, because IRS isn't really looking dollar for dollar. Social Security is. Once you make a withdrawal, Social Security wants to know what it's used for. IRS is like, just tell us, this year you had $500 in able account withdrawals. Did you have $500 in qualified disability expenses? And that's only if they audit you and ask. For the most part, it's just you're just keeping those records and those receipts in case you're asked. We're not going to ask you, but the feds or Social Security could. And we're wrapping up, so I got time for 2 more questions. Let me go to you, and then we'll fit you in. We'll fit you in.
In the case of a child,
Mm-hmm.
pretty much if I put any money on this account, it's gonna be just to be there to accommodate, because of the things that you're saying, housing, he is living with me.
Yeah.
Food, I buy the food. Can I buy the food and say it was for him? Or
Good question. I mean,
and we already have a health savings account to pay for
Mhm.
the deductibles for the insurance for all the therapies. So I'm wondering, like, in the case of the
so you're in a great, if you're getting all your needs met, this is a great point for whatever that future may be. When he's no longer 5 and he's 18 in 13 years. Ugh, that's scary, ain't it? And he's becoming an adult. What does that look like? Is he going to have an apartment on his own? Is he going to need additional services? Is he going to be working and needs help with transportation? So the great thing, especially if you have a young child and you don't have any expenses, is building that savings account for them year after year, so you have this nest of money that can be used for a variety of things to help them with whatever the future may look like.
I know health savings account.
Mm-hmm.
You put the money that the employer put the money directly before taxes. We don't pay taxes.
Yes.
What about able account?
So so health savings accounts, that's a pre-tax benefit. Able accounts are post-tax. So it's kind of like a Roth IRA. We're using after-tax dollars. And then if it grows, it can grow tax-free. So you're getting the benefits of earnings on already taxed money. Let's go to you, and then we'll go to you real quick. Yes, sir. Do you have a question? No? Over here? I thought I saw a hand. All right.
Can you roll the able account, can you roll it into other financial vehicles such as a Roth IRA or a regular IRA or retirement?
Okay, we're going to end on this question. This is a good question to end on. Talking about rollovers. So able accounts are financial products. They are financial tools. So his question was, could you roll over these types of accounts into other financial products? So for example, a Roth IRA or other type of vehicle. And unfortunately, no. 529A is what dictates how ABLE programs are run. That is a unique section in the IRS code, 529A. And the only allowable non-taxed way to roll over ABLE funds is to another ABLE program or to a sibling who after that person passes to a sibling that has an ABLE account. If you wanted to move this money to some other financial product, you would most likely have to pay the penalties and the taxes on any earnings of that. And it could, if it's, because remember, it's for the beneficiary, for that person with a disability, they might count that and as a resource and impact their benefits. So it's a little, because remember, it's not like a 529 college savings account where if you open that, you're the owner of it, but the owner of the ABLE account is the person with the disability, and that's where it gets a little tricky when it comes to their benefits. So, but that's all the time I have today. I know this isn't what you guys came for, but hopefully you learned something. And if you want to learn more about ABLE, we have a booth in the exhibit hall. New accounts before the end of June. If you open one up, we'll give you $50. Check Facebook for iPads. Steph, did I get it all? We're good. I got the thumbs up. Thank you all, and have a great family cafe. Thank you.